I was still holding my grandmother's hand when my husband leaned close and whispered words that froze my blood. "Get your bag. We're leaving. Act like nothing's wrong." His voice was calm, too calm. And when I looked up at him, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear, the kind that makes your skin prickle before your mind even knows why. My name is Maya. I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, family gatherings have always felt like a test I was destined to fail. My father was strict, my sister Sierra was perfect, and I was the invisible one present, but overlooked, tolerated, but never celebrated. Grandma Rose was the only person who ever made me feel like I truly belonged. She practically raised me when my parents were too busy climbing social ladders and chasing appearances. So when Dad called after years of silence inviting me to Grandma's 85th birthday, I couldn't say no. Still, something inside me twisted with unease the moment I stepped into that old family house again. It looked the same on the outside: white shutters, creaky porch, the smell of polished wood and lemon cleaner, but it felt staged, too perfect, like someone had scrubbed away every trace of warmth and left behind a hollow shell. Sierra was bustling around in a designer dress, clipboard in hand, pretending to be the devoted granddaughter. Dad was grinning too wide, giving tours like a real estate agent. And Grandma, my sweet Grandma, sat in her favorite chair, wrapped in her pale blue shawl, smiling weakly, her eyelids drooping, as though she hadn't had real rest in days. Jake, my husband, never trusted these gatherings, but he came for me. He always does. He squeezed my hand tighter than usual when we walked into that living room filled with balloons and chatter. He said nothing, but his silence spoke louder than words. I felt it too, that crawling unease, that sense that something wasn't right. And then it happened. One moment we were clapping along to Sierra's over-the-top speech, the next, Jake was at my side, whispering in my ear to leave. He brushed his hand against mine so subtly no one else noticed, our private signal for time to go. My heart thudded in confusion, but I trusted him. I always trusted him. So I smiled, excused myself to Grandma with a soft squeeze on her shoulder, and followed him through the crowd as if we were slipping out to sneak a glass of wine. The second the sliding door closed behind us, Jake grabbed my wrist, not roughly, but firmly, guiding me down the hall toward the front. "What's happening?" I whispered, my voice shaky. He didn't answer. He just handed me my purse and phone, his eyes darting like a man counting exits. We reached the car, and as soon as I was inside, he locked the doors. The click echoed like a gunshot. He stared into the rearview mirror, then turned to me and said, "Something's very, very wrong." I froze. For a heartbeat, I thought he was overreacting, but then I remembered the look in his eyes. The same look he had once when he pulled me out of a hotel in the middle of the night because he noticed something off. He wasn't dramatic. He was careful, observant, methodical. If Jake said something was wrong, I believed him. But nothing made sense. This was just Grandma's birthday. Why the fear? Why the need to flee? My chest tightened as Jake pulled his phone from his jacket. He didn't show me the screen, just said, "I'll explain in a minute. Don't panic." His calmness only made me more afraid. When I glanced back toward the house, I saw Sierra by the back door. She wasn't waving goodbye. She was staring, watching us with a look that stripped every illusion away. That's when I knew. Whatever this party was, it wasn't just a party. You see, my family has always been about appearances. They lived for control, for power, for dominance, masked as tradition. And suddenly, sitting in that locked car, I realized I had walked straight back into their trap. Jake's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, though the engine wasn't even running. I sat frozen, my heart pounding against my ribs, as if it wanted to escape before the rest of me could. His eyes stayed glued to the rearview mirror, scanning the driveway, the porch, the line of trees swaying in the late afternoon breeze. It wasn't just paranoia. He was looking for someone. "Jake," I whispered, barely able to breathe. "What's happening?" He finally turned to me. His face set in a seriousness that scared me more than shouting ever could. "Your sister," he said, his voice low, controlled. "She's not just throwing a birthday party, she's setting something up. And I think your dad's in on it." The words struck me like a slap. My chest tightened until I could barely speak. Setting what up I demanded, though part of me didn't want the answer. Jake unlocked his phone and handed it to me. On the screen was a string of messages, a conversation he had somehow intercepted or overheard. I didn't even ask how. My father's name, Sierra's name. Words that made my stomach twist. Transfer. Inheritance. Sign tonight before she's too weak to fight. Keep Maya quiet. I felt the blood drain from my face. Grandma, they were planning to force her. Jake's hand landed gently on mine, grounding me as the world tilted. I saw Sierra slip something into Grandma's tea earlier, he said, his jaw tightening. She's been drugging her Maya. That's why she looks so tired, so weak. They want to make her sign over the house, the accounts, everything. And if you stay inside, you're just another obstacle for them to silence. The truth hit me with nauseating clarity. My father and sister weren't celebrating Grandma, they were circling her like vultures, ready to strip her of the last thing she owned. And I, the daughter they always dismissed, was the one they hadn't planned for. I shook my head, the betrayal suffocating me. She raised me. She gave me everything they wouldn't. And they're stealing from her. My voice cracked. Jake nodded. And if you try to stop them alone, they'll turn on you. They've probably already planned how to paint you as unstable. That's why I said we need to go. We can call the lawyer, the police, someone who'll listen. But I couldn't leave. Not like that. Not with Grandma trapped inside, her trust being poisoned by the two people she should have been safest with. I reached for the door handle, but Jake caught my arm. Maya, don't. Think this through. His grip wasn't harsh, but it was desperate. He was afraid for me. But all I could see was Grandma's fragile frame wrapped in that pale blue shawl, the only safe harbor I had in a storm of rejection. If I left her now, I would be betraying her the same way they were. I looked Jake in the eyes, my voice trembling but resolute. If I run now, I'll never forgive myself. She's my family, the only real family I ever had. For a long moment he didn't speak. The silence in the car pressed down on us, broken only by the distant sound of laughter drifting from the house. Finally he sighed, his shoulders slumping in resignation. Then we don't run, he said. We fight, but we do it smart. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small voice recorder, the kind he used for his work. He pressed it into my palm. If we're going back in, we go in with evidence. Every word, every lie, every threat. They won't be able to bury it this time. I stared at the recorder, my hands trembling, then nodded. My fear was still there, sharp and raw, but it had a new companion now: fire. The kind of fire that comes when you've been pushed too far for too long. Together we slipped back out of the car, careful to look casual as we walked toward the house. From the porch, Sierra's eyes found mine again, and this time her smile was sharper, colder. She knew I had seen something. She knew I wasn't playing her game anymore. And I knew she was ready to strike first. The moment we stepped back into the house, the air felt heavier, thicker, as though the walls themselves knew what was about to unfold. The chatter in the living room seemed forced, like background noise in a play staged for an unsuspecting audience. My father stood near the fireplace, laughing too loudly with a cluster of his business associates, while Sierra circled the room like a queen surveying her court. I kept my expression neutral, even pleasant, though every muscle in my body was taut with dread. Jake slipped the recorder into the inside pocket of my blazer, pressing it once to be sure it was running. My hand brushed against it as though it were a lifeline. Grandma sat where she always sat, in her armchair by the window, her head tilted slightly to the side, eyes glazed with fatigue. I moved to her quickly, kneeling beside her so my body shielded her from the rest of the room. Her hand was cold when I took it, her skin paper thin. "Grandma," I whispered softly. "It's me, Maya." Her eyes fluttered open, recognition flickering weakly. She smiled faintly, though it looked more like the effort drained her. "My girl," she murmured, her voice fragile as glass. Sierra swooped in before I could say more, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. "Maya," she said, her tone dripping with false warmth. "Why don't you help me bring the cake from the kitchen?" I glanced at her, and for the first time I let her see the steel in my eyes. "I'll stay with Grandma," I said evenly. "She looks tired." Sierra's smile tightened, her eyes narrowing just slightly. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Don't make a scene. Tonight is important." It was both a threat and a promise. Jake moved closer, his presence solid at my back. He was pretending to admire the decor, but I knew he was watching every movement, cataloging every word. My father caught sight of us then and excused himself from his companions, striding over with a booming cheer. "Maya," he said, clapping me on the shoulder as though we were old friends instead of estranged family. "So glad you could make it. Your grandmother's big day means the world to her." I forced a smile, but my voice shook with barely restrained anger. "Funny," I said, "she doesn't look like someone being celebrated. She looks like someone being used." His expression faltered just for a fraction of a second before he recovered with a chuckle, always the dramatic one he teased lightly, as though I were a child misbehaving. But I saw the flicker of warning in his eyes, the one that used to silence me when I was younger. "Not anymore." Jake's phone buzzed quietly in his pocket, and he glanced at it quickly before showing me the screen. It was a message from our lawyer friend, one Jake had texted while we were outside. "If they're coercing her signature, record everything. It's elder abuse. You'll have a case." The words steadied me. For once I wasn't powerless. As the evening dragged on, Sierra orchestrated the event, like a conductor steering guests toward the dining room, arranging speeches, pouring drinks. And all the while, Grandma sat slumped in her chair, her eyelids heavy, her head bobbing. When I leaned close, I smelled something bitter in her tea, faint but sharp. That was when Sierra placed a stack of papers on the table in front of Grandma, along with a pen in her manicured hand. "Just a little formality, Grandma," she cooed sweetly. "To make sure everything is in order for you. It won't take a minute." My breath caught in my throat. This was it. I pressed my fingers against the recorder in my pocket, feeling it hum with silent power. Then, in a voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, "What are you asking her to sign, Sierra?" The room went still. Conversations faltered. Even my father stiffened, his smile cracking. Sierra's eyes flashed with anger before she masked it with another false grin. "Oh, just some routine documents for the estate. Nothing complicated." But my voice rose stronger now, carrying across the room. "She's barely conscious. And you're putting a pen in her hand. That isn't routine, it's exploitation." A ripple of gasps and murmurs spread through the guests. My father stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Maya, that's enough." But I didn't stop. Not this time. I turned so everyone could see my face, hear my words. "You're drugging her. You're trying to steal everything she has left while calling it love." Gasps turned to whispers, sharp and scandalized. Sierra's mask cracked fully now, her eyes cold and venomous. "Careful, Maya," she hissed. "You don't know what you're saying." But I did. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. My father's face darkened, his charm dissolving into something harsher, something closer to the man I remembered from my childhood, the man whose word was law, whose disapproval could silence me for weeks. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only those nearby could hear, but the venom in it was unmistakable. "You will not ruin this family with your hysterics, Maya." I felt Jake's hand press lightly against my back, a steady reminder that I wasn't alone this time. The recorder hummed in my pocket like a heartbeat, catching every syllable of my father's threats. I straightened, lifting my chin. My voice trembled at first, but it grew stronger with every word. "I'm not ruining this family. You did that the moment you chose greed over love." Gasps rippled through the room, guests shifting uncomfortably, some openly staring at the papers Sierra had placed before Grandma. Sierra's smile had vanished completely now, replaced by a sneer. "You've always been jealous." She spat her words sharp enough to cut glass. "Always the outsider. Grandma trusts me, not you. That's why she'll sign." But Grandma's hand, frail and shaking, slipped from the armrest and clutched at mine. Her lips parted, her voice barely audible, but the word was clear: no. The room froze. Tears burned my eyes as I bent closer to her. "It's okay, Grandma. You don't have to sign anything." Sierra's face contorted with fury, her composure unraveling. "She doesn't know what she's saying," she snapped, grabbing for the papers. But Jake was faster. He snatched them off the table, holding them high so everyone could see. "These aren't party documents," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "These are transfer forms. They're trying to strip her of everything she owns." The whispers exploded into outrage. A few guests stepped closer, peering at the papers, murmuring in shock. My father's face went pale, then flushed crimson. "This is a private matter," he barked. "Everyone out." But no one moved. The illusion of control had shattered, and for the first time my father's authority looked brittle. I rose slowly, keeping Grandma's hand in mine, my voice steady and clear. "You wanted to keep me quiet to pretend this was just a celebration. But the truth is out now. Everyone can see it." Sierra lunged toward me, her hand raised as if to strike. But Jake stepped between us, his voice firm. "Don't even think about it." Her hand trembled in the air, then dropped, her eyes darting around the room as though searching for an ally. But there were none. The guests, once charmed by her perfect act, now recoiled from her. My father stood rigid, his jaw clenched, but even he seemed to realize the tide had turned. I pulled the recorder from my pocket, holding it up. "Every word you've said tonight is on here. Every threat, every lie. If you ever come near Grandma again, this goes to the police and to the press." The silence that followed was deafening. Grandma squeezed my hand, her eyes glistening with tears. For the first time that night, I saw a flicker of strength in her gaze, as if she had been waiting all along for someone to stand up for her. I turned to Jake, my chest tight with both fear and relief. He nodded, his arm wrapping protectively around me. Together, we led Grandma out of that suffocating room, past the stunned guests, past Sierra's twisted glare, and my father's seething silence. As the front door closed behind us, the night air hit my face like freedom. My legs shook, but I kept moving, step after step, carrying Grandma's fragile frame with Jake's steady support. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from my family. I was walking away on my own terms. Yet even as the car door shut and the engine roared to life, I knew this wasn't over. Families like mine don't surrender easily. They would come for me, for Grandma, for anyone who threatened their power. But I also knew something else. This time, I was ready. The headlights cut through the dark road as Jake drove us away from the house, the tense silence broken only by the sound of Grandma's faint breathing in the back seat. I kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror, my chest tightening at how fragile she looked. Her head slumped to one side, eyes fluttering half open. But even in her weakness, her hand never let go of mine. That tiny grip was enough to steady me. Jake reached over, giving my knee a reassuring squeeze. "She's safe now," he said softly. But I could hear the unspoken words in his tone for now. We spent that night at our apartment, settling Grandma in the guest room. I brewed her tea, careful to keep everything natural and clean, while Jake called our lawyer friend again. We had the recording, the documents, and witnesses. We had everything we needed to expose what my father and sister had done. In the quiet hours after midnight, I sat by Grandma's bedside, watching her sleep. The anger that had fueled me all evening gave way to grief. How had it come to this? My own father, my own sister, willing to poison and exploit the one woman who had ever truly loved us. And me, how many years had I silenced myself? Let them twist me into the role of the invisible daughter, the expendable one. I brushed a strand of hair from Grandma's face and whispered, "I won't let them hurt you again. I promise." The days that followed were a storm. Our lawyer filed for an injunction freezing Grandma's assets so they couldn't be touched. The police opened an investigation into elder abuse, thanks to the recording Jake had captured. And the whispers that had once upheld my family's reputation began to turn against them. Business partners pulled away from my father. Sierra's polished image crumbled as word spread about the party, the papers, the truth. They tried to fight back. My father showed up at my apartment one evening, pounding on the door until the neighbors called building security. "You'll regret this, Maya," he shouted through the wood. "You've destroyed this family." But I didn't open the door. I simply held the recorder in my hand, reminding myself I wasn't powerless anymore. Sierra sent messages dripping with venom, calling me a traitor, a liar, a jealous failure. I deleted every one without replying. Her words no longer had hooks sharp enough to pierce me. And through it all, Grandma grew stronger. Without the poisoned tea, her eyes cleared, her voice regained a measure of steadiness. One afternoon, she reached for my hand, her gaze steady. "You saved me," she whispered. "I always knew you were stronger than they wanted you to believe." Her words broke something open inside me. For years I had carried the weight of their dismissal, their cruelty, their gaslighting. But in that moment I felt lighter, seen, validated. Months later, when this case concluded, the court declared Grandma unfit to sign legal documents, without independent oversight effectively blocking my father and Sierra from ever trying again. They lost their grip on her wealth, their power unraveling in public shame. As for me, I found something I never expected: peace. It didn't come all at once, but slowly, in small moments sipping coffee with Jake on quiet mornings, watching Grandma smile at a blooming flower in the garden, hearing the sound of my own laughter return after so many years of silence. Yes, the betrayal still stung. Yes, the scars will always remain. But I no longer saw myself as the invisible daughter. I was the woman who stood up when no one else would, who chose truth over fear, who protected the one person who had protected me all my life. If you've listened to my story, maybe you've faced betrayal too, from family, from those who should have cherished you most. I want you to know their cruelty doesn't define you. Your strength does. You are more than the wounds they left behind. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If my story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, subscribe for more stories, and leave a comment with your own experiences. I promise I'll read everyone.